Fled from my abusive fiancé in Spain. Now I'm rebuilding my life with a new love, but his past haunts us. Hi, I'm Kate. Never thought I'd be sharing my story like this, but here I am, about to dive into a tale that feels like it came straight out of a movie, except it was my life, my reality. A few years back, I found myself entangled in a relationship that was anything but loving. I was living with Ashton, my fiancé, who, from the outside, seemed charming and affectionate. But behind closed doors, he was a different person, controlling, abusive, and utterly suffocating. It started subtly, with small criticisms and suggestions, then escalated to controlling where I went, who I spoke to, and how I spent my time. My days became a series of calculated steps to avoid his anger. I felt like I was fading away, losing bits of myself to his temper and manipulation. I was isolated, cut off from friends who might have seen the signs, distanced from family who might have pulled me back from the edge. One day, Ashton came home, his face lit up with a twisted kind of excitement. He announced that he had planned the perfect getaway for us, a vacation to Spain. He described it as a fresh start, a romantic escape just for the two of us. But I knew better. This was no vacation. It was a power play, another of Ashton's strategies to pull me further into his world, away from any hope of rescue. I protested, tried to say no, but he wouldn't have it. According to him, we were going, no matter my feelings on the matter. So, with a heavy heart and a mind swirling with anxiety, I packed my bags. I remember looking around our apartment, at the walls that felt more like a prison than a home, wondering if Spain might just be a change for the better, or if it would be another chapter in my nightmare. Our flight to Spain was overshadowed by Ashton's mood swings and tightly controlled behaviors, which had become increasingly severe in the months leading up to our trip. As we boarded the plane, his grip on my arm was firm, almost painful, a silent message that on this trip, more than ever, I was under his control. Throughout the flight, he was outwardly charming to the flight attendants and fellow passengers, but his whispered words to me were laced with threats and reminders of my place. When we finally touched down in Madrid, my body was tense with apprehension. Ashton's behavior had been escalating, and I feared what the isolation of a foreign country might bring. As we collected our luggage, he leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "Remember, Kate, you're here to make me happy. Don't embarrass me." Our first day in Madrid was a whirlwind of sightseeing. Ashton had meticulously planned every hour, leaving no room for rest or spontaneity. At each landmark, he demanded I smile for photos, pulling me close and whispering harsh reminders to appear happy. "Smile, Kate, or else," he'd hiss under his breath, ensuring the pictures showed a loving couple, masking the reality of our toxic relationship. That evening, back at the hotel, the tension that had been building all day finally erupted. I made the mistake of mentioning how overwhelmed I felt by the pace of our activities, hoping for just a sliver of empathy. Instead, Ashton's face twisted into a mask of fury. "You ungrateful bitch!" he spat, his voice low but fierce. "I bring you to one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and this is how you repay me?" His words were quickly followed by a sharp slap across my face, the sting of it sending shockwaves through my body. I stumbled back, tears springing to my eyes, not just from the pain, but from the deep well of despair that had become my constant companion. "I'm sorry," I murmured, the words automatic, a conditioned response to years of such encounters. Ashton stepped closer, his presence towering over me. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Kate. You need to learn." His hand reached out again, this time grabbing my arm and squeezing until I thought the bone might crack. I cried out, not just from the physical pain, but also from the realization of how trapped I truly was. He released me abruptly, his expression softening as if he suddenly remembered where we were. "Get yourself together," he ordered, his voice now eerily calm. "We have dinner reservations soon. Fix your makeup, and for God's sake, put on something nice." Alone in the bathroom, nursing my bruised arm and wiping away smeared mascara, I stared at my reflection, hardly recognizing the woman looking back at me. The vibrant, confident person I once was had vanished, replaced by this hollow shell. As I touched the tender skin of my face, a part of me wondered how much more I could endure. Dinner that evening was a quiet affair, with Ashton playing the doting fiancé whenever the waiter or neighboring patrons paid any attention to us. But under the table, his hand gripped my thigh painfully whenever I spoke too softly or too much, each squeeze a reminder of the punishment that awaited me for any perceived misstep. The following days were no better. Each morning began with Ashton dictating what I should wear, how I should style my hair, how much makeup I should apply, all under the guise of wanting me to look my best. But I knew it was just another form of control, another way for him to assert his dominance. It was during a rare moment alone on our fourth day in Madrid, while Ashton was preoccupied with a phone call, that I found myself wandering the corridors of the Prado Museum. Surrounded by the profound expressions of pain and resilience in the paintings, I felt a stir of something long suppressed within me, a spark of defiance, a whisper of my old self urging me to reclaim my life. Lost in thought, I didn't notice the man who had paused beside me, observing the same painting. "It's powerful, isn't it?" he commented, his voice gentle, pulling me out of my reverie. I turned to find myself looking into kind, inquisitive eyes. "Yes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "It really is." His name was Matthias, a British expat living in Madrid, and our conversation flowed naturally, a stark contrast to the interactions I had grown accustomed to. For those few minutes, I allowed myself to imagine a different life, one filled with respect and genuine connection. Little did I know, this chance encounter would soon ignite a series of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about survival, love, and liberation. Matthias's presence at the Prado Museum that day felt like a brief escape from the suffocating reality of my life with Ashton. As we talked, his interest in art and his thoughtful observations offered a refreshing respite from the control and fear I'd become accustomed to. He mentioned he was a local art teacher and invited me to visit his studio sometime if I was interested. I tucked away his business card, a small beacon of light in my otherwise dark world. The days that followed were marked by a careful balancing act. Ashton's suspicions seemed to grow with each passing hour, his scrutiny tightening whenever I showed any sign of independence or happiness. Despite this, I couldn't shake off the memory of my conversation with Matthias, or the way it had made me feel, like I was still capable of being more than just an extension of someone else's will. On a particularly stifling afternoon, after enduring another morning of Ashton's orchestrated tours and forced smiles, I excused myself under the guise of needing some air and made my way to Matthias's studio. The decision to go was reckless, fueled by a desperation to feel a glimpse of the freedom I'd tasted during our brief encounter. I told myself it was just to see more art, to have a moment of peace away from Ashton, but deep down, I knew I was also going to see Matthias. His studio was in a quaint part of Madrid, tucked away in a vibrant alley adorned with hanging plants and bright murals. The space was open and sunlit, with canvases of all sizes lining the walls and the smell of paint and turpentine in the air. Matthias greeted me with a warm, inviting smile, seeming genuinely pleased to see me. "I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice as calming as I remembered. "I thought you might like to see some local art, not just the classics in the museums." As he showed me around, explaining his techniques and the stories behind some of his pieces, I felt a part of me awakening, a part I thought I had lost forever. The studio was a sanctuary, and for a couple of hours, I allowed myself to forget my reality. Before I left, Matthias handed me a small painting, a beautiful scene of Madrid's skyline at dusk. "To remember the good parts of your trip," he said, his eyes kind. Accepting the painting felt like grasping a lifeline, a tangible reminder that a different life was possible. When I returned to the hotel, Ashton immediately sensed something had changed. His eyes narrowed as he noticed the wrapped canvas under my arm. "What's that?" he demanded, his voice cold. "It's just a painting I picked up," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "A souvenir." Ashton snatched the painting from me and unwrapped it, examining it with a sneer. "You met someone," he accused, his voice a menacing whisper. "You think I'm stupid? You think I wouldn't find out?" The confrontation that followed was inevitable. Ashton's anger erupted into violence, his accusations turning into physical blows. It was the worst it had ever been. After he left the room, I was left alone, bruised and shaken, but a resolve within me had crystallized. The encounter with Matthias had changed something fundamental in me. The kindness and freedom he represented now stood in stark contrast to the oppression and abuse I lived with. That night, as I tended to my wounds, both physical and emotional, I made a decision. I couldn't return to the shadows anymore. The fear of staying had finally outweighed the fear of leaving. With the painting Matthias had given me as a symbol of hope, I began to plan my escape. I didn't know yet how I would leave or where I would go, but I knew that I had to make a change. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, faint but undeniable. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, but it was a path I knew I needed to take. The following days seemed to blend into a mix of fear, excitement, and newfound determination for me. Each morning, as Ashton busied himself with his own distractions, unbeknownst to me, indulging in affairs of his own, I found myself drawn back to Matthias's gallery. It became my sanctuary, a place where colors and shapes translated into freedom and possibility. Matthias, sensing my growing interest in art and perhaps understanding my deeper need for escape, welcomed me with open arms. He introduced me to his eclectic group of friends, artists, writers, and free spirits, who embraced life in ways I had forgotten were possible. Their stories of personal struggles and triumphs, of breaking away from their own chains to redefine their destinies, filled me with a mixture of awe and inspiration. Each story shared, each laugh echoed in the gallery's halls, wove a stronger thread of courage within me. Matthias and his friends showed me a life vibrant with passion and devoid of fear, a stark contrast to the oppressive existence I had known with Ashton. They didn't know the full extent of my situation, but their acceptance and warmth provided a glimpse of what life could be, free and filled with genuine connections. Meanwhile, Ashton, ensnared by his own vices, found fleeting comfort in the arms of strangers. His dalliances were careless, driven by a compulsion to assert his dominance not just over me, but in every aspect of his life. Yet, despite his infidelities, he viewed me as his possession, a token to be controlled and paraded, not an individual with desires and needs of my own. One afternoon, after a particularly uplifting day at the gallery, I returned to the hotel to find Ashton waiting, his mood visibly dark. The air tensed immediately as he watched me enter, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Where have you been all day, Kate?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Just out seeing some of the city, enjoying the art." "Art? You?" Ashton scoffed, stepping closer. "You're up to something. You're different." I could feel his anger rising, a storm brewing in the confines of our hotel room. My heart pounded, fear mingling with a defiant anger that had been growing within me. "Ashton, I am different," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'm seeing what life can be, what it should be." Ashton laughed, a harsh sound that filled the room. "You think you can just change? That you can be like those pretentious fools you've been spending time with?" His voice was laced with contempt. "You're nothing without me, Kate. Remember that." But something had shifted in me. The encounters with Matthias and his friends had ignited a spark I couldn't smother. "No, Ashton, I'm not nothing. I never was. I deserve more than this. More than you." His face twisted into a snarl, and in an instant, he was upon me, his hands gripping my arms with bruising intensity. "You're mine," he hissed. "You'll never be anything more." This time, though, I fought back, not just with words, but with a physical strength born of desperation and newfound resolve. I pushed against him, surprising him, and myself, with the force of my refusal to be his victim any longer. Ashton stumbled back, shock momentarily overtaking his anger. That moment of hesitation was all I needed. I grabbed my bag, my hands shaking, and ran from the room. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't spend another moment under his control. Tears streamed down my face as I fled into the bustling streets of Madrid. I was scared, yes, but also exhilarated. For the first time, I had stood up to Ashton. I had declared my need for freedom. It was a declaration that marked the beginning of the end of my old life, and the first, tentative steps toward a new one. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but it was a path I knew I needed to take, no matter where it led. My heart was racing as I navigated the winding streets of Madrid, each step taking me further away from the life of oppression I had known. I found myself instinctively heading towards the one place that had become my refuge, Matthias's studio. The door chimed softly as I entered, the familiar smell of paint and turpentine enveloping me, offering a small comfort. Matthias was rearranging some canvases when I burst in. He turned, startled by my appearance, my tear-stained face and disheveled state. Without a word, he crossed the room and gently took my hands. "Kate, what happened?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Between ragged breaths, I told him everything, my confrontation with Ashton, my declaration of independence, and my fear of what Ashton might do next. Matthias listened intently, his expression turning from concern to resolve. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said decisively. "You can't go back there, not now." I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and relief wash over me. Matthias's presence was calming, and in that moment, I realized how much I had come to rely on him, how much he had come to mean to me. "We can plan something," Matthias continued, his mind working quickly. "I have friends who can help us, places you can stay until we figure out a more permanent solution." "Matthias, I started, but he held up a hand to stop me. "First, let's get you safe. Then we can think about the next steps, he insisted. Under his guidance, we formulated a plan. I would stay with one of his trusted friends for a few days, while Matthias arranged for both of us to leave Madrid. The idea of leaving with him, starting anew, filled me with a hopeful trepidation. Amidst the chaos, I realized I had fallen for him, for his kindness and bravery, for the way he saw me, not as a victim, but as someone worth saving. The following day, as we were finalizing our plans in a quiet cafe, my past collided violently with my present. Ashton appeared out of nowhere, his eyes wild with anger. He must have been watching me, tracking my movements ever since I fled. "There you are!" Ashton bellowed as he stormed towards us. The cafe went silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. "Kate, you're coming back with me now," he demanded, grabbing my arm with a force that made me wince. I tried to pull away, but his grip was strong. "No, Ashton, I'm not going anywhere with you," I declared, my voice louder than I intended, drawing more attention from the surrounding crowd. Matthias stood up, positioning himself between Ashton and me. "She said she's not going with you," Matthias intervened, his tone firm yet calm. Ashton sneered. "And you think you can stop me? She's my fiancé." The tension escalated quickly, with bystanders murmuring and pulling out their phones, possibly to call the police or record the scene. Seeing the public's eyes on him seemed to momentarily pause Ashton, but his anger was far from quenched. "I don't care what you say, she's mine," Ashton spat out, trying to reach for me again. This time, I was ready. I stepped back and addressed him with all the strength I had gathered. "Ashton, I am not a possession. I am a person, and I will not live under your control any longer." The crowd's murmuring grew louder, some voices expressing support for me. Emboldened by their backing and Matthias's unwavering presence, I felt a surge of empowerment. Faced with the public confrontation and the potential for legal consequences, Ashton's resolve finally cracked. He released his grip, shooting daggers with his eyes. "This isn't over, Kate," he hissed, before turning and pushing his way out of the cafe. As he left, a collective sigh rippled through the bystanders, and I felt Matthias's hand on my shoulder, reassuring me. The public's support had been unexpected but vital, giving me the strength to stand up to Ashton's tyranny. With Ashton gone, Matthias and I quickly left the cafe, aware that the real challenge was still ahead, leaving Madrid and building a new life away from the shadows of my past. But for the first time, I felt truly hopeful about the future, about a life with Matthias, and about rediscovering who I was meant to be. The train ride to Barcelona felt like a surreal dream, with landscapes blurring past us as Matthias and I sat close, discussing our plans for a new beginning. The physical distance from Madrid, from the life I had escaped, brought a sense of liberation I hadn't felt in years. Matthias's presence beside me, his hand finding mine, filled me with a warmth that chased away the lingering shadows of my past. We talked about everything: where we would live, what jobs we might find, how we could truly start over. The conversation flowed into plans of exploring the art and culture of Barcelona, of finding a small, sunny apartment where we could paint and create together. In those moments, our kisses were filled with promises of better days, our hugs a sanctuary from the world. Matthias shared stories of his life before we met, of his travels and dreams, and I found myself opening up about my hopes and fears in ways I hadn't dared before. It was as if we were weaving a new tapestry of life, one filled with the vibrant colors of trust and mutual respect. The joy of our escape and the thrill of a fresh start made everything seem possible. But the sheen of new beginnings began to tarnish soon after our arrival in Barcelona. As we settled into the rhythm of the city, I noticed Matthias's occasional guardedness, moments when he seemed to pull back, his open nature clouded by something unspoken. My curiosity and growing unease led me to a chance conversation with one of Matthias's old friends from his university days, who unwittingly revealed a side of Matthias I had never known. His friend, thinking I knew more than I did, commented offhandedly about Matthias's wild days and how he was surprised to see him so changed, so committed. He was quite the charmer, you know, always with someone new at his side. Broke quite a few hearts with his adventures and escapades. I guess people really can change, huh? He laughed, unaware of the seeds of doubt he was planting in my mind. This casual revelation was a jolt to the system. Driven by a mix of disbelief and a need for clarity, I confronted Matthias later that day. We were in a quaint cafe near our temporary home, a place that had quickly become our spot for morning coffee and planning our days. "Matthias, there's something we need to talk about," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "I heard something about your past, about how you used to be with relationships. Is it true?" Matthias's expression shifted from confusion to resignation as he realized what I was asking. He sighed, running a hand through his hair before meeting my gaze. Kate, I wasn't sure how to bring this up, or if I even should. Yes, I had a turbulent past. I made mistakes, many of them. I was selfish, often careless with others' emotions. But that's not who I am anymore. His admission, though delivered with sincerity, made my heart sink. The details of his past relationships, his questionable actions, emotional manipulation to maintain casual relationships without commitment, made me question everything. Had his intentions with me been genuine, or was I just another chapter in his life of constant change? That night, as we walked back to our apartment under the soft glow of street lamps, I felt a chasm growing between us. The man I thought I knew, the man I had fallen in love with, now seemed like a stranger. This revelation forced me to reevaluate not just my trust in Matthias, but also my rapid dependence on him for my newfound happiness. In the quiet of our shared space, I realized that jumping from one intense relationship to another had not given me the independence or self-recovery I truly needed. Though it pained me, I knew what my next step had to be. For my own growth, for the chance to truly find myself beyond the shadows of others, I needed space. Space to heal, to understand who Kate was without the influence of a partner. The following morning, I shared my decision with Matthias. It was one of the hardest conversations of my life, filled with tears and heartfelt confessions. But it was necessary. Necessary for both of us to understand that love, no matter how deep, needed a foundation built not just on attraction and affection, but on individual strength and integrity. As I packed my bags to move into a small studio apartment alone, my heart heavy but hopeful, I knew this was not an ending, but a beginning. A beginning of truly discovering myself, of building a life that was genuinely mine. The journey ahead would be mine alone to shape, filled with challenges, no doubt, but also with limitless possibilities. As the weeks turned into months, my life in Barcelona began to take on a rhythm of its own. The small studio apartment I moved into became a canvas for my rediscovery, walls adorned with my own artwork, shelves filled with books on art history, philosophy, and self-healing. The solitude I had once feared became my sanctuary, a place where I could reflect, heal, and grow without the influence of another. My days were filled with long walks through the city's vibrant streets, evenings spent in classes and workshops, and nights dedicated to painting and introspection. Ashton, on the other hand, found himself grappling with the consequences of his actions. His return to our home city was met with cold shoulders from friends and a stark realization that his controlling behaviors had cost him more than just our relationship. Without me to dominate and manipulate, he was forced to confront his own deep-seated issues. This confrontation led him to seek therapy, an endeavor he initially resisted but eventually embraced as his reality unraveled further, showing him the importance of change and self-improvement. Matthias's life, too, took a reflective turn. Our parting had left him with mixed feelings, regret for not being transparent about his past sooner, and a renewed sense of purpose to live authentically. He threw himself into his art and teaching, using his experiences to enrich his classes and guide others in finding their paths through creativity. Yet, despite the fulfillment his career brought him, there was an undeniable void that my absence had left. As spring turned into summer, Matthias's thoughts increasingly returned to me. The transformation I had sparked in him was profound, and he realized how much he truly missed me. Compelled by this realization and a hope that perhaps our paths could converge once more, Matthias decided to reach out. One warm evening, as I was setting up for an art exhibition at a local gallery, a familiar figure appeared at the entrance. My heart skipped a beat as our eyes met. Matthias walked in, his approach hesitant yet hopeful. "Kate," he began, his voice soft, reflective. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how much I've missed you. Not just us, but you, your spirit, your resilience, your art. I've grown a lot since we last spoke, and I hope there's a chance for us, even now." The gallery around us faded into a blur as I considered his words. I saw in his eyes a sincerity that resonated with the changes I had felt in myself. We talked long into the night, past the exhibition's close, sharing our journeys, our growth, and the lessons we'd learned about ourselves. Deciding to start anew wasn't a decision made lightly. We agreed to take it slow, to date as though for the first time, this time with transparency and mutual respect at the core of our relationship. We understood the value of individual strength and the importance of not relying solely on each other for happiness or identity. Our new beginning was cautious, yet filled with a quiet optimism. Matthias and I walked through Barcelona's starlit streets, talking about everything and nothing, a comfortable silence falling between us when words were unnecessary. We were two people who had been through significant turmoil, found ourselves, and were now ready to try again, this time with a deeper understanding of what it meant to truly love and support each other without losing ourselves. As we moved forward, hand in hand, the city lights flickering around us, I felt a sense of completeness. Not because I was with Matthias, but because I was with myself, fully and unapologetically. Together, we were embarking on a journey not just of romance, but of continued self-discovery and mutual respect. In each other, we had found not just a partner, but a fellow traveler on the road to living a full, authentic life.